Good morning, and welcome to Redeemer Lutheran Church. I'm Pastor Gary Lodeholt. In my Thursday Bible study, we have often talked about how the disciples sometimes seem so dense. 3 times, for example, Jesus tells them that he will go to Jerusalem, be arrested, be crucified, and then 3 days later rise again. And when it all happens just like he said, they all seem so surprised. In fact, at times we have called them the disciples. They don't seem to get it, no matter how many times Jesus tells them. And when that happens, perhaps there's the need for patience, and that's a special kindness all its own. This week we are looking at 5 instances of Jesus having a special kindness or compassion in the Gospel of Matthew. I'm sure you know Jesus expressed kindness often and regularly, but these times perhaps open up new vistas of understanding and an invitation to us to act with kindness too. Maybe this time we'll get it. Our story today comes from Matthew 15, close on the heels of the story from yesterday when Jesus fed over 5,000 people with 2 fish and 5 fist-sized loaves of bread. It was an incredible miracle pointing to the abundance of God's grace. After that same day, Jesus walked on the water, and then the Pharisees and scribes tried to trap Jesus in his words again. Then he and his disciples went out of Israel, perhaps for some time away, and he ended up assuring a Canaanite woman that God's grace wasn't just for the Jews, but for her and all people as well. And that's when Jesus comes back to the area around the Sea of Galilee, and right away the crowds flocked to him again. There Jesus taught and healed, and it went on and on and on. Finally we come to verse 32, which says, "Then Jesus called his disciples to him and said, 'I have compassion for the crowd, because they have been with me now for 3 days and have nothing to eat. I do not want to send them away hungry, for they might faint on the way.'" Now let me remind you that we are in Matthew 15. And just the chapter before this one, Jesus had fed 5,000 people with a sack lunch. So having witnessed what Jesus did there and knowing what he could do, how do the disciples respond to Jesus' words? The next verse says, "The disciples said to him, 'Where are we to get enough bread in the desert to feed so great a crowd?'" How dense can you be? You just saw this. A much more faithful response might have been, "Lord, we can't, but we place ourselves in your hands." Disciples indeed. When we read the Bible, we often can't hear the tone of voice the people are using, but sometimes when I read this part, I picture Jesus rolling his eyes and saying in both disappointment and exasperation, "Okay, bring me what you have and tell everybody to sit down." This time with 7 loaves and a few fish, he fed 4,000 people. And once again, there were leftovers. But did you notice the important part about kindness there? Jesus called his disciples to him and initiated an act of kindness for the people. They had been gathered around for 3 days listening to Jesus, and the people's supplies were exhausted. Jesus knew they wouldn't have the strength to get home. Now, if we had been in that situation, we might have said, "This isn't my problem. They didn't have to stay this long, and as for getting home, that's on them." But that's not what Jesus does. No one brought the problem to him either. Jesus, in his kindness, saw the need and met their need. And maybe that's the call inherent in this story. We shouldn't wait for the need for kindness to come up and beat us over the head. Rather, we should, like Jesus, be actively looking for how we can be kind to others, looking to the need around us, looking to be the answer to the gnawing hunger for love around us? If we do, maybe it will grow by the hand of God until we are all filled with kindness. Thanks for watching, and remember to let this day belong to God.